Good morning and welcome to What the Bleep is a Spiritual Awakening. I'm here with some wonderful speakers that are going to share their narratives. Matthew, my co-host. I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit. I am a spiritual healer. I'm a Reiki master teacher, sound healer, medium, Akashic Records channeler, and a medical intuitive. So I'm really in tune with spiritual stuff. And Matthew, my
Hello.
co-host, let's introduce you.
Yeah, hello everybody. I am Matthew, the Shamanic Happiness Coach. I am a Reiki, oh my gosh, it's always so big. Holy Fire Karuna Reiki Master. There we go. I'm just going to get that whole thing in there now that they've got so many upgrades. As well as I do Yoti, I am a coach, and I am also the manager of Zero Sunrise Wellness, coming to you from one of their offices right here. Hello, hello.
And by the way, we're in Reno, Nevada.
Yes.
Okay, Carey, let's start with you and let's have you. We're going to do introductions and then we'll get into the narratives. Hi.
Thank you so much. I am Carey Lowe. I'm coming to you from my home in Loreto, Baja, California, Mexico, where I've lived for the last 30 years. Pardon my raspy voice, got a little bit of a cold this morning. But I'm so honored and blessed to be here with you this morning. You know, my dad gave me some advice a long time ago, is that you should always sit in the front row, raise your hand, and take notes. And that's what I plan on doing this morning, is listening to everybody else, sharing as much as I can about my story, and taking notes so that I can share this with as many other people as possible. When a problem's shared, it is halved. And a lot of times when somebody else shares their problem, my problem is solved. So it's a wonderful thing to listen. I'm a Ziegler Legacy trainer and coach. I have the pleasure of having hit rock bottom about 22 years ago. And ever since hitting rock bottom, I've been on a spiritual journey. That journey led me to becoming a Ziegler Legacy trainer and coach, and being trained by some of the best mentors in the business when it comes to motivation and inspiration. But my biggest inspiration comes from you, comes from listening to other people and what they have to offer. I'm an author of a book called Not Today's Shark, and it is one salesman's journey of spiritual growth. I've been a salesman for the last 30 years after retiring from the U.S. Coast Guard. But it's basically, I learned a long time ago that my charismatic attitude could get me a lot of money, could get me, my family, a lot of success. But I realized after hitting rock bottom that it takes more than charisma to succeed. So it's the tools that I've gained since hitting rock bottom that I like to share with other people these days.
Thank you. I can't wait to hear your story. Amanda.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's really wonderful to just get to share space like this with like-minded souls. I'm an intuitive medium and a soul purpose guide, and I help sensitive souls, empaths, basically anybody who kind of experiences the world differently, to feel as though who they truly are is good, is enough, in order to kind of have that confidence, that belief in self that allows you to show up in your life in a way that can, create change both in your own world and in the world around us. So that's just been a big part of my journey and my spiritual awakening as well. So I'm excited to get to hear everybody's and to share my own journey as well.
Thank you. Maria?
Hi, everyone, and greetings all the way from Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I'm actually originally from Edmonton, Alberta myself, but here vacation. I'm a spiritual empowerment coach, aligned purpose light worker, and soul journey healer to conscious awakened beings. I help those who've awakened into consciousness truly develop their abilities and skills that help them to truly move them into their purpose and develop the purpose inside of them. So, hi.
Thank you. Katherine.
Good Morning, beautiful people. My name is Katherine Loranger. We've got Alberta in the house here. I'm up near Edmonton, Alberta, and my soul is definitely, I hear the Playa del Carmen and the California, and I'm like, oh, there's some longing there. So super excited to be in this space, having this conversation. And I'm a transformational life coach for souls in process, also master's in counseling and Reiki master and bunch of other stuff. And I really support people to live from the true point of power within, which is our connection to the divine in whatever way that looks for us, and to be guided to live into the greatest expression of their life.
Thank you. Oh, we have a comment.
Oh.
Kimmy Energies here. Thank you for showing up, Kimmy. Deborah, please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much for having me today. Good morning, everyone. I am Debora Hollick. I live in High River, Alberta, just 30 kilometers south or 60 kilometers south of Calgary. So yes, we definitely have Alberta in the house. So I am becoming known as the Smash Through Mentor, and I help people kind of smash confusion, solve chaos, and stop cussing as they navigate through their current challenges. And so that's what I'm all about. I have a marketing background, and as well, I've had a marketing business for a long time. So I used to, before the marketing, I was doing speaking and, delving more and more into my spirituality and everything. And then the marketing business got in there. And so I just kind of moved the spirituality into the marketing. And I've had a lot of fun over the years with clients. And now I've decided, you know what, it's an opportunity to do both. So.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
All right. Matthew, do you have anything to pop in or anything right now before we get started? You're muted. No?
I'm human.
Okay.
So I'm human. And so I guess we could just say that for all of our guests and listeners and everybody, is please, comment, ask questions of our guests as you're coming through. Realize we are human as well. That's part of this experience, part of this series podcast. So at any time that we need to feel human or be human or pay attention to our bodies, please allow us to go do that. So you might see us like get up and move or whatever. We encourage you to also, who is listening, have this on in the background doing dishes, whatever it is. And maybe during a workout. But any question you have, post it and we will see it. Hopefully we will get to all of them on the replays and whatnot. We are planning on using any questions that you guys put in there for other videos and other information that we can disseminate to the rest of the collective public so that we can all use it. So thank you very much. I guess that's it.
Okay. I'm ready to hear these fabulous stories. So Carey, you got something interesting, I know.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody else's stories indeed. My story's not that different than probably millions of other people's stories. And that's the beauty of this conversation, is reaching out to people and having people say, oh yeah, me too. Me too. I felt the same way. And I think that's the most amazing thing. And I'm so grateful for you having this conversation so that people can say, oh yeah, me too. Because that's where this all happens. That's where this all comes together. I'm 63 years old. 30 years ago, I got out of the Coast Guard, the United States Coast Guard, having had a career in the United States Coast Guard. Was married, had 2 little babies, and we made the decision to move to Baja, California, Mexico. So I was living in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. I've been living in Mexico now for 30 years in Baja, California. And in Baja, California, especially down in Cabo San Lucas, that's a place where pretty much all you do is party. That's all you do is just party and party and party. And whether you're working or not, that's just to make it so you can party more. I was very lucky in that I was able to get into the field of sales. I did well at sales, and it seemed like the more I partied, the better I got at sales. And one day that just kind of ran out. It's all good until it's not good anymore. And I found myself at rock bottom. And there's for a lot of people that don't understand what rock bottom is. Hopefully, they'll never have to get there. It's a place where you just have this incomprehensible demoralization, where you feel completely worthless, like you don't belong on this planet, and that the world would be better off without you. After getting way too drunk and way too high, I found myself sitting on a beach underneath the palapa, trying to get as drunk and high as I possibly could. And I wrapped a wire around my neck, and I tried to commit suicide. I still have a scar all these years later to remind me of how close I came to losing my life that day. I had what you might call a white light experience. A lot of people have they'll have a spiritual awakening, and it could be of the educational variety where they learn about it, and other people have a white light experience. I pretty much had a white light experience that day on the beach, where my mother, who had passed away years ago, literally came to me and said, "Hey, it doesn't matter how messed up you think your life is. It doesn't matter how useless you think you are. You still have 2 young children that need you, and you need to get back to work, and you need to go live your life." Somehow I was able to come to and get that wire off my neck. And it was suggested to me that I go to Alcoholics Anonymous, which I did. And from that moment on, I've lived in a spiritual experience. The farther I get away from my spiritual experience, the farther I get away from my spiritual awakening, the more my monkey mind wants to jump in and tell me that I'm worthless and tell me that I have no value. But now I have tools. I have a lot of tools that I use to keep my monkey mind at bay and to know that I do have worth. And the main tool is to maintain this constant connection with my higher power, who I choose to call God. And it's a God of my understanding. It doesn't have to be a God of your understanding. And that's the most beautiful thing about a spiritual awakening, is that for me anyway, for this person, it's my connection to the higher power that keeps me on this road of spiritual growth. I figured out a long time ago that I can't afford to have a comfort zone. The comfort zone for this person right here is in a gutter, face down, passed out. That's my comfort zone. My comfort zone is, let's have success. Now let's pour gasoline all over the success and light it on fire and watch it burn and watch everybody else burn with it. That's my comfort zone. So I realize these days that there's only 2 things that are happening. I'm either growing or I'm dying. And if I'm in a comfort zone, that means I'm not growing. So I must be dying. And I don't ever want to do that again. So for me, this concept of spirituality and this concept of a spiritual awakening is something that I need to do every single day. I need to keep growing every single day so that I do not end up in what I now call my danger zone. I have a danger zone and I have a growth zone. I can't afford a comfort zone, and I don't believe anybody else can either. But it's this spiritual growth. It's this connection to my higher power that keeps me in that growth zone. And as long as I know it's just not me, it's not me. I'm not the one. My ego is not my amigo. So I give it over to a higher power every day. And I'll just leave it with that for now.
Wow, thank you. Okay, let's move on. That was powerful. Amanda, I'm sure you have a powerful story too to share with us.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that your powerful story. It's really transformative, I'm sure. My story, my story kind of starts just being a sensitive kid, which I'm sure a lot of people can kind of relate to, because unfortunately, in this world that we live in, sensitivity is not really welcomed in. It's not encouraged. And so the way I experienced the world when I was younger, I was told very quickly, not only by family, but by teachers and other people in a position of power, I would say, was that that wasn't good. That wasn't right. That didn't fit into a narrative that was comfortable for others. And so I spent a lot of time kind of going, oh, okay, so who I am at the core of my being isn't right. It isn't good. And it was kind of that moment that I didn't trust myself any longer, and I began to just look outside of myself constantly for confirmation. Am I doing it right? Am I peopling right? Right? And that just kept me very far away from my intuition, from being this very intuitive being, so to speak. And fast forward that in my life, in my mid-20s, I kind of just looked up one day and was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm in a toxic job that I hate, doing things that don't bring me joy. And if you asked me who I was at that time, I would be like, I don't know. I have no idea who I am. I'm whoever you need me to be, so to speak. And it wasn't this big giant moment for me when I look back on it. It really wasn't. It was just these small little experiences that over time began to have me come back to myself. And one of the things I did was through running. I always credit running to being my kind of catalyst for awakening. Because of course I didn't just do a little bit because I was just trying to prove myself. I ended up running like 100 miles in ultra running. But it was that where I realized that other people couldn't tell me how to do it. I was always told, you need to go faster, you need to try harder, you need to push more. And in running became such a physical experience. I was like, no, that is not feeling good. I'm not doing that. So I ended up starting to listen to myself. And realize that, maybe what I want and what I do is right for me. So that was a part of it. And then that has continued to grow, and I quit my corporate job and I had my children, and all of these things have continued to add to me realizing that it's been interesting, because I think when we think of, maybe, at least for me, when I first started this awakening, I was like, I need to learn all the things outside of myself, and I'm gonna like learn all this stuff and get it. And then through time, I went, oh no, in here, that's where we have to go. We have to peel back all of those layers that are keeping us from what's already here, because you're not going to find it out here. It's already here, which I know everybody here is well versed in. And that's the hard part. That's the part where you're like, right, this isn't like the super fun experience I was hoping it would be. But that's where the transformation comes. That's where you begin to realize that maybe who you are is really amazing, just as you are today. And maybe that person is worthy of all the good, all the abundance, all the amazing things that are coming to you that are already here for you. So that's been my journey, and it will be ongoing, I'm sure, forever. And I wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Awesome. Maria, would you like to share your story with us?
Yes, absolutely. What amazing, beautiful stories you both have shared. Thank you so much for sharing that, you guys. My story actually truly begins at the age of 3, where as a child, I grew up in Spain. My family is originally from Avila, which is northern of Madrid. And when I was really young, my father and I went to Seville, which is southern of Spain, and I was actually kidnapped for 7 days and brought over to Morocco. And during that time, I had what's called a spiritual awakening. Flashes of my past lives kept coming in as I was imprisoned in this location, like a little cell jail place with mold coming everywhere. You know, they were feeding me bread. And as my parents finally were able to receive me back, I was telling my father, who was also spiritual himself, that I said, Papa, I remember everything. I said, the world's not the same. And he's like, yes, mija, which is daughter in our language. It's not. So to me, tragic or traumatic experiences have always been greater awakenings for me. During that time, I was, educated into spirituality, really understood it all and stuff like that. Worked with herbs, understand the languages with Mother Earth. And then my father passed away, and then another awakening happened for me. I kept evolving and evolving even more. And then as we moved to Canada, actually in Edmonton, where my mom decided to land and stay, I always ask them, like, why the cold? She's like, because it's nice here. And I was brought into a Catholic school. And by that time, I was doing something so normal for us that I was told never to practice or, work with herbs or do anything with candles ever again. It was really shunned upon. And so I had to hide my true self from everybody. That was one of the things that I had to do. And so as I grew up, I really got into this relationship that had a lot of narcissism and trauma, things in the normal mundane life that we all, go through in some way. And I was actually pregnant for 8 months. And during that time, I fell down the stairs and lost my child. And then this was one of the biggest spiritual awakenings I ever had to go through. It was very difficult. And that was over 7 years ago, actually. And to this day, being around anyone that is spiritual, what I really found is tragedies really bring out either the best in you or the worst in you. It's how you take it and how you keep perceiving moving forward in life and really staying connected to your guides, to yourself, that really help you to keep waking up every single morning. So that was my journey throughout the time. And within that time, I really started going into meditations and Reiki and, working with people, especially mediums. I sought out mediums quite often during that time because I wanted to stay connected. But, one thing that I've always learned is we're always connected. It's the disconnection that makes us, lose ourselves in that way. So, yeah, as I'm saying this, the sun is coming out even more. So just the sign itself that we are always connected with our spirit guides and our connection to our own awakenings every single day. So that's my story.
Oh, wow. Thank you for sharing that. Hi, Katherine.
Hello from snowy Alberta.
Oh.
I could just like sit and listen to everybody, right? It's so wonderful to hear each of our unique journeys, and really, I believe it's all kind of a similar journey that we're on to really realize that we are an expression of the infinite. We are connected. We have access to that all the time. I kind of joke that I came into this lifetime choosing to do it the hard way. I have like a little flat spot on the back of my head, and it's from like banging my head against the wall so many times. And I don't know if people can relate to that, where I had this belief for many, many years that I was fundamentally flawed, that there was something wrong with me. I was inherently unworthy. And what I've learned is that a lot of people feel that way. And through my process, and like depression and violent assaults and infidelity and all of the kind of life content, what I have really truly learned is that we are all part of this universal energy, and we all have different words for it. I've had multiple kind of profound mystical experiences, and my journey has been where I wake up and then I kind of fall asleep again, or like I have these like amazing mystical experiences where I'm fully connected to, guided by the infinite, the source, whatever you want to call it. And then I kind of forget that, like the human part of me gets caught up in this duality of space-time that we're navigating in our physical form. And so just this last year, I actually had a really cool probably one of my most profound spiritual experiences, because I'm in the work. This is what I do, and I've been studying this for over 25 years. And I was doing some timeline work, and I actually went back to the place in time where my soul was birthed from consciousness. And it was who. And what happened, what I realized then was that for all of these lifetimes, and maybe not all the lifetimes, but certainly it kind of played out in this one, this feeling of like unworthiness and inherent flawed. And I realized that I wasn't brought to earth because I was cast out, right? It wasn't that they didn't want me. It's because I was worthy and I was ready. So it was actually this massive gift to come to this physical plane and to be experiencing what we're experiencing. And so I also did some mother kind of soul lineage work with mother wounds, and realized that my mother and my maternal grandmother chose to have the lives that they had so that I could actually get to this particular point in time. And so, yeah, it's just been phenomenal. It's just been phenomenal. And I guess where I'm at now is knowing, like, for each and every one of us, that we are part of that. We are connected to, we are resourced by, it's always there. And it's just how we choose to interact with that. And that we're all here because we're worthy. We are inherently worthy of living joyful, loving, abundant lives. And it doesn't matter, what our education, what our past, any of that stuff. We don't have to do anything to deserve it. We just deserve it because we're here. We're here. So yeah, I feel like I kind of babbled a little bit there. I kind of babbled a little bit, but yeah, it's really that we are all worthy. We are all connected to. We can all learn how to work with that, and really, it's about how do you find that for you, right? Because just like a snowflake, we all have unique soul prints. And your journey is going to be unique to you, and it's about learning how to connect to tune into that part of you that knows.
Fabulous. Thank you. Oh, Deborah, what do you got?
These are hard acts to follow. Catherine, I could listen to you babble all day. I just want to hear you babble more. And all of you, I can relate, I think, in some ways to each and every one of the speakers here, in a manner of speaking for throughout my life. Like Amanda, I had a spiritual awakening when I was young. I think it was like something I wasn't really squished out of me until I was about 5. And I used to love to sing, and I'd go outside at night. My mom and dad would let me go outside at night, and I would sit on the swing, and the dog would be there. I was surrounded by trees. I was lucky enough to grow up on a farm, and of course, I knew my mom and dad were looking out the window often, so I knew I was very safe, and I just felt safe. And I would sing to the stars, my audience, and I just knew that they were listening. Like, it was big, and I loved every moment of it. And I certainly was. I talked a lot when I was a kid, and I was very inquisitive, constantly wondering, constantly asking questions. And one day, this adult bully with a big red nose that was visiting my parents just told me to stop talking. And he was big and burly, and I looked up at him, and I just felt my light just diminish. And he said he was going to nickname me the name of the local radio station because I talked too much. And I looked at my parents, and neither one of them did anything, but I remember the look on their faces, but they never said anything. And growing up, when I did, you were taught, you listen to the adults. You pay attention to the adults. Like, you're just little. What do you know? But I knew this didn't feel right. But I thought, well, my mom and dad didn't say anything, so I guess he must be right. So I know I didn't stop talking, but I always felt then that, oh, I shouldn't be speaking. I shouldn't say what I think. But on goes life, and I was always inquisitive. I grew up Roman Catholic, and we had to board at the convent for 2 weeks every summer for catechism, and it was a bit structured. But I would listen, and I knew I couldn't dare ask the nuns any questions, like that would be really bad. So I never did. But I would ask my mom, and my mom was great. And finally one day, as I got into high school, she said to me, "You need to ask Monsignor these questions." And I think she thought that would shut me up and stop asking, because how would you dare to question Monsignor on the religion? I said, "Oh, that would be great, Mom." So somehow she arranged it, and I went to school in the city at that point by bus. And so I can't remember if it was once a week, once every 2 weeks. I would go after school, I would walk to the rectory, and I would have tea with Monsignor. And I would question him. Well, what about this? Well, how can this be? This doesn't make sense. And I know there's a lot of stuff going on about the Catholic Church these days, but I tell you, this man was a precious being in my life. And he would guide me, but he'd say often, "My child, the church tells me I must tell you this." And after about the second time, I thought, "Oh, he agrees with me. he's questioning too." And so every time he'd say that to me, I thought, aha. And he never once in all it was at least 2, 3, 4 years that I would converse with him on a regular basis and question everything. He never once told me to stop questioning. And for that, I'm forever grateful.
Wow.
So that's a little bit about me. And back many, many years ago, 1988, I actually had, I guess, what would be called a near-death experience coming out of recovery. They're in the recovery room. And that was when I always knew there was more there. But then I really knew, because I was basically given the choice to go or stay. And it's, parts of the story are quite funny, if you can call a near-death experience with me. But there are some pretty humorous parts in there. And I had been exploring and whatnot, different religions and different spirituality, different modalities, just right from when I was a kid. So this just propelled me forward even more. And so that's where I'm at today. And I like to share and teach people about how to listen to the whispers, because I've had those nudges and I've had audible. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, thank you, Debora. Matthew, did you want to share your story?
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, I think that you should share a little bit about yours too, just real briefly. I guess, like everybody is saying, it seems like a spiritual awakening perhaps doesn't happen just once. And so as we continue to develop, we can recognize when we've had spiritual awakenings and be like, oh, that's what that was, and I would say that I've had a couple, 2 specifically that were more life-changing. Was one when in a divine conglomeration of mess, a big old just like mess, I chose to go through a forced spiritual awakening, and I didn't really realize what that was, but it put me into a suicidal depression. And I did a medicine ceremony just with some friends, and I didn't realize that I'd signed up for this, right? And it was not the medicine ceremony wasn't presided over by somebody who could really provide the biggest support of the container at the time. All of us as friends are, altruistic in the container and in the love that we're bringing to one another. And when I came out of that, it was powerful because I got a glimpse into, like a couple of us talked about, beyond this moment, and so I immediately had this knowing about a lot of my current circumstances, and I was like, no, that's weird. How do I know this? And my ego was like, no, all the things you're taught and how you hold on to reality, like the things you expect were there. And so within 48 hours of that experience, I became suicidal, and into that, I also signed up for that friends group to reawaken me in that moment to my own divinity, to realize, like, that rock bottom, that worthiness, that unworthiness is just a signal. And so I was able to come out of it. It took me 3 years of doing that, and of practice with a therapist and other spiritual works to get over that, and also with medication and things like that. It was beautiful. It was a really nice time when I look back on it. It's not as nice of a time when we're obviously going through it. The second, and that one was 10 years, 11 years ago or so. And the more recent one was about 5 or 6 years ago, where I really was sick and tired of the ickiness in the universe, or the ickiness that I'm seeing around, and it was affecting me personally. So a lot of us, when we see atrocities, they do affect us personally. And in that moment, that was my time, and it happened around the Pulse nightclub shooting in Florida. And right after that one, I was so motivated spiritually. I had energy to work for days to go out and try to make a difference, because I was like, you know what? If we can connect and not feel so lonely, and I knew this to my core, if we can look into somebody's eyes and somehow pass that information that you are not alone, like you're worth it, that almost just like this hug would settle in, and your need to hurt the world around you, to try to form it to whatever destruction is in your heart, would dissipate. I somehow knew this to the core, and it set me on an experience where I went and I did free hugs in the community. Can't do that now in COVID land, but I did free hugs in the community. I started a nonprofit. I was doing them once a month. I was doing them all over, and I was like, you know what? If nothing else, if it just reduces road rage, right? Let's do that. I started doing world peace meditations, all these things. But anyway, during the first time I went out to do free hugs, I tried to make it such a big deal. And really, we always we make our own spiritual experiences such a big deal when they're always internal, right? You're just inviting people along. And so I went out for my first day of free hugs, and I'm scared, and I've got my sign, right? I should have brought it, knowing now that this is spiritual awakening, I should have brought my sign, because I still have it to this day. Anyway, I was able to impress on one person, well, two technically, myself and then another person, but I was giving people hugs, and we're having a great time, right? And I saw some people across the street, and I was like, oh, they want a hug. And I'm like, woo, just in this party mode. And the street lights and all these things are not working out. And so I'm trying to cross the street to get to them, and it just doesn't work out. I end up on the other side of the street next to a destitute person who is obviously in transition, or in transient changing cities. And I'm like, whoa, this is really interesting. Like, somebody I'm being presented with that I know exists in this world, I care for, but also it's such a monumental thing to approach somebody who you have such a different identity from, right? And so I'm like, well, I could just stand here awkwardly with my sign and then wait to cross the street again, twiddle my thumbs, or I could turn to this person and ask them if they need a hug. So I did, and the person goes, no, I don't like humans, basically. They're like, I don't like people, blah, 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 and there's this tirade about anger. And I'm like, oh, okay, what do I do? Internally, oh God, that was really awkward. And so I had this moment again. I could either continue and wait for that light, or I could say, why do you feel that way? that conversation opened up to them on that street corner, talking to me for 45 minutes about their entire life, where they came from, how many pilgrimages they've gone on, all these things. And at the end of that, the only words that I could say in my entire existence, and I've never said this in public, in a person I don't know, was, "You're beautiful." And I broke down and cried right there. I could not believe what was happening. And I was like, this is an experience. Holy crap. And so anyway, that blew my experience up. And I was like, life is so different, So from that moment, it really brought me into many other paths. I've had a couple more awakenings. But yeah, those were my biggest ones that I can remember in my life. Those were huge. Yeah. So thank you for asking me to share mine. Now, so I'm going to do the same thing, Julie. And will you share one of yours?
Well, the beginning, way back in the day. Now, I'm 52 right now. So when I was 47, 46, 47, I had left my husband and I had a boyfriend. So I broke up with this boyfriend and I had this profound grief from this and I couldn't get over it. And I didn't know where to go to get over this. And somebody said, well, you should try Reiki. I'm like, okay. So did this Reiki. And actually, let me back up. Before this, I was asking Spirit, can you help me with this? Can you help me with this? I don't know what to do. Should I do this Reiki? And Spirit said, if you go down this path, you are going to find things out about yourself that you may not like to know. And it's going to be a rough road. So I still thought about it for a couple more weeks before I did this Reiki. And it was this really, on every level, physically, emotionally, mentally, just completely, I looked like I was on a bender for a couple weeks. I had bloodshot eyes, crying for 6 weeks. And it's still coming up, it's a process, I find out later this ex-boyfriend of mine, we have shared multiple lifetimes together. He made a promise to me like 5,000 years ago that he was going to help me with my mission. And so that's why that connection is so, I grieve. So, having understanding, but you're always asking questions. I'm constantly asking questions. Why this? Why that? It's just a process. So you just, now it's, I go through Ascension symptoms. So it's time to sit on the couch. Like, what is going on now? What's coming up? And just remind myself it's a process. You just got to go through it. So, I could go deeper into that, but, it was pretty pronounced for me in the beginning. So thank you, everybody, for sharing their stories. I don't know if anybody's had physical, emotional, mental, seeing those processes coming up, the patterns of behavior that you have, and mentally and emotionally dealing with those. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak to having that experience in their process.
Ascension symptoms. Yeah. Go ahead, Deborah. Yeah.
Well, as I mentioned about the bully, I basically, I realize now, and this was sort of a spiritual awakening that I had not even that long ago, where I realized that I was now the bully because I kept allowing what that experience did to me over and over again. So I kept bullying myself. And that was quite, I agree with Matthew when he says we have more than one spiritual awakening. I personally feel I have many, and I don't know, I think we can call them, some people would call them aha moments maybe. But, and for some they're bigger ahas and for others they're less. But I realized actually not that long ago, just a few months ago, that, you know what, you're the bully now. You're the one beating yourself up over and over and allowing that. You're an adult. You've allowed this now for 60 years. What is wrong with you? Like, are you a little thick in the head or what? So I that I felt was a spiritual awakening. And then just the other day, and it was emotional. In fact, I was quite surprised as I told the story today that I didn't cry, which means obviously I've healed in some way from it. But as short as 2 years ago, I could not have told you that story without becoming extremely emotional. So now I'm kind of happy about it. So it's another emotion, which is I'm very thrilled about. And I also realized the other day that I actually have forgiven him, and now I appreciate what he did, because here I am and I've learned from it, and now I get to share with other people, and I'm hoping that this has become a gift, so that brings me joy. So that's me.
It's beautiful. Does anybody else had these? I mean, obviously everybody has, but on like anyone have the experience of waking up at 3 a.m. all the time?
Oh my gosh, always. I and sorry to cut anyone else. I apologize, but one of the things about what I've noticed when it comes to spiritual awakenings is that your spirit and your body are trying to connect each other every single time. And waking up at 3 a.m., that's like, to me, it's like the moment when your spiritual team comes in and says, move that ego aside and listen to your connection with us. Listen to what's happening around you. Because to me, when we're doing something when it comes to spiritual awakening, it's like us transcending away from our ego. Our experiences have such a defined moment that we are always connected, like I said before, but it's those moments when we totally disconnect, and that's where our ego, our fear, our, kicks in, and it's like, it's a moment of like, oh my gosh, there it is. That's what's happening. I listen. What am I supposed to do, right? So that's just my intake on it.
Thank you. Anybody want to add to that 3 a.m.? I know that's when I got up to journal.
I get the 3 a.m. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I get the 3 a.m. awakening all the time, and I've learned to incorporate it into a ritual. It's telling me I need to wake up. It's telling me I need to wake up and get into my spiritual practices. So these days I set my opportunity clock a little bit earlier. I don't have an alarm clock. I have an opportunity clock. Alarm clocks are scary, and I don't want to be alarmed early in the morning. I want to realize I do have an opportunity to wake up, an opportunity to get involved in life. And I do have an alarm cat, however. That's a different story, who makes sure that I get up when my opportunity clock goes off. But these days I set my opportunity clock early in the morning. And the first thing I do is I get out of bed and I take care of some chores. The reason I take care of these chores is it gives me a sense of achievement. Anytime I have a sense of achievement, I also have a sense of self-worth. I'm actually doing something. I'm doing something productive as soon as possible. And then I spend an hour at least, sometimes up to 3 hours lately, in a spiritual growth setting. For me, belonging to AA, the wonderful thing about about COVID is that so many in-person meetings were shut down, and we all went to Zoom meetings. And I now have the pleasure of hosting or chairing a Zoom AA meeting every morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And there's up to 150 people in that meeting every single morning. And you want to talk about getting God shots, because that's what I've been hearing a lot about this morning is God shots. That's what I like to call them. It's when I hear something through somebody else and it's God speaking directly to me. I truly believe that God speaks to me through other like-minded people. And for me, other like-minded people are other broken people. When somebody says, oh, I've never had a drink, or I've never had a drug, or I've never lied, or I've never cheated, but this is how you should run your life. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to pay any attention to that person. But when someone says to me, oh my God, yeah, I used to do those drugs. I used to do that. I've woken up in the gutter. I've lost my job. I've done all that. That's the person I want to listen to, because I want what they have. I want what they have. So I try to, we were talking about having these spiritual awakenings more than once. I have spiritual awakening 10, 20, 30 times a day, listening to other people share their experience, strength, and hope for just a few minutes, and just getting these little nuggets. I was taught, I have a wonderful mentor, Bob Bodine, and he wrote an amazing book. This amazing book is called Two Chairs, The Secret That Changed Everything. The whole concept of the two chairs is very simple. If you could have an appointment, with God, the God of your understanding, whatever your concept of this higher power is, if you could have an appointment with that higher power, and you knew that your higher power was going to show up and answer all of your questions, just like Deborah had questions for the Monsignor. If you knew this higher power could show up and answer every single question, would you go to that appointment? Of course you would. Well, set that appointment. Set that appointment for first thing in the morning. Set up a chair for you and a chair for your higher power. Who's your higher power? Well, it's something you create. It's something that you know is a best friend to you, that you can tell all your secrets to. You're at least for this person, my spirituality is only as good as my secrets. And I need to be able to share my secrets with somebody. So, very simple scenario with two chairs. Do you have a higher power? Yes, I do. Do I believe that my higher power knows my problems? Well, yes, I do. Do I believe that my problems are too hard for my higher power to solve? Well, no, I don't. Right? Well, now just shut up and listen, because now my higher power is going to tell me exactly what I need to do. What is that? It's the next right thing. That's what I need to do. What is the next right thing? Well, I can't change the first thought that comes into my head. I can't do that. But I can change the second thought that comes into my head. So for me, the way to stay spiritually in spiritual growth, and the way to continue to have a spiritual awakening multiple times a day, is to just give my thought this acid test. Is this thought coming from a place of love and service? Or is this thought coming from a place of self-centered fear? Because it's coming from one of those two places. If this thought is coming from a place of self-centered fear, then I need to peel that onion and figure out very quickly what it is I'm afraid of. I must be afraid of something if I'm angered, right? Because I'm into fight or flight. But if my thought is coming from a place of love and service, well, that's a good thing. So just setting up these two chairs every morning just gives me that time to reflect, time to sit and physically connect with my higher power. It's my form of meditation, and any meditation is wonderful, because meditation itself is prayer. And I was told a long time ago that the distance between me and my higher power is equal to the distance between my knees and the floor, meaning that I need to humble myself and realize, you know what, it's not me. I'm not in charge of this thing. And that's the most empowering thing in the world, to realize I'm not in charge. But the one that is in charge has already done it all. I just need to do the done and just get out of their way, get out of my own way. Just go with the God shots.
Love it. Love it. Does anybody have anything to add? I love the two chairs too.
Yeah, I really loved that, because you brought up so many beautiful tidbits of wisdom that I've heard in different avenues. And I just love it. The first time I ever heard about speaking through another, having your higher self or consciousness or whatever coming through to speak through you to others was with Lisa Nichols. And she does this thing that says, as you're listening to her, or as you hear something somebody else says, you say 2 yeses. First is a small yes, and that's just to acknowledge the statement. And the second one is the big capital yes, and that is to you telling that this resonates with you, kind of a thing. So it's like, yes, yes, you know. And I love that. So I encourage everybody, anytime you hear something that resonates with you, to just do that. Yes, yes. And you have to be oomph on that next one, because it gives you that little like, oh yeah, I'm paying attention now. I love that part. I love where you brought in so much, I would call it shadow work, where I say this, when I teach meditation, consciousness and compassionate mindful meditation and things like that. And when I educate people on the shadow, I say the shadow is here to show you the degree to which you're separated from love in the moment. So it's almost in this space where anytime you're angry, anytime you're separated, right? You're disconnected. And if you can just listen to what you're saying, you're upset with something. And then there's also this ego that comes in, because that's like the ego that's trying to control our reality. And when we listen and understand that our ego is upset, then we can try to be friends with it and go, oh, I'm at odds with my ego. So if we're doing this, what's going to happen in the outside world, right? And so as I become friends with my ego and we worked in tandem together, then it's a different story. Like you're saying, I don't need to listen to that inner voice. I can listen to the higher voice of things. I love that. God, you said so many things. I love how you brought in experience, strength, and hope in that. Geez, I mean, I wrote so many notes on everything. I haven't wrote notes on everybody's stuff, but wow, this is just powerful. Yeah. With this ascension symptoms, or this thing, I wanted to bring in the question, because we haven't touched on it yet. So we talk about spiritual awakening and ascension symptoms for ourselves. What about for the not the self? And I mean to not the experience you're having internally, but how can we see ascension symptoms reflected in the outside world? I'm just gonna open it up. Do you guys get what I mean by that? Sorry.
Maybe rephrase the question.
What does it look like for the outside world to go through an ascension, or excuse me, a spiritual awakening?
I feel like we're seeing that right now in reflected in like our favorite thing, COVID, that's been going through. It really seems to have slowed the world down, right? And in slowing the world down, that's a lot of us who have had to be with themselves and slow down that hustle, that thing that's always kept us from really connecting to our stuff and our stuff, so to speak. So I think what we're witnessing before our very eyes is a lot of the world sitting with themselves, and you can make a choice in that place of, you can sit and go, I don't like this and I want to do something about it, me. Or I don't like this and I need to blame it on somebody else. It needs to be outside of myself, the problems that I'm experiencing, the life experience that I'm having. I'm not in a place right now where I'm okay with saying that maybe that's me, like maybe I control this. From just what I've been personally seeing. So I feel like what we witness we're seeing people come into who they truly are and start to share their voices and their power and their purpose. And that is in both parts really beautiful, but it can also be scary, because it looks like the collapse of things. It looks like the end of things when it's not necessarily the case. It's also the beginning of things. It's the coming together. It's the realizing what really matters in this world. And it may not be all the things that we have. It's more the connection between each other, that we're not alone in this world, that who we truly are is good and has value to bring about change. So I think that answers your question, but it's very much like, I think we're literally witnessing it right now, and we can look at it from different lenses, whether that looks like the collapse or whether it looks like a rebirth.
I love that. And it reminds me, I was gifted this little tiny picture that somebody painted for my office for when clients or whoever needs to see it. And it says, oh, hello, squirrel. Excuse me. Oh, hello, square one. We meet again. Yeah, it's like, oh, hello. We're starting over again. And I love what you brought in because you brought in, and you point this way, mirrored. There's also this thing about like when our I am is out of alignment, our ego and like who we are doesn't really get it. And so we struggle, we go into suffering. And when your I am is outside of your alignment, it seems like you're more prone to have a spiritual awakening because it's like, wake up, your I am is too far gone, wake up to your new I am. Like this is, so it's kind of like, oh, interesting. So now I'm seeing this, I'm upset at this outside. And so I can understand that is part of my I am, my self-discovery in a way. I love that. I love that. What, like, besides COVID or besides this collective meditation that we've been able to, the prayer and meditation that we've been able to be in, what else do spiritual awakening symptoms look like in the outside world?
To me, I think it's like a remembering. It's a recognition in that moment or during that time that you go, I remember this is what is so important. And that's how I like to think about it. So that, for me, that works.
It's this great remembering. I love that. It's, I like what you just said, and as you shared that energy just shifted, because it's like, remember what it's like to be peaceful. Remember what it's like to be calm. Come back. Wow.
And you have arrived as you remember. It's come back, but now you've arrived. And it's almost like that, I'm safe. I'm comfortable. I'm okay. Everything's always going to be okay one way or the other.
Absolutely. Katherine, did you have something to add?
Yeah, thanks, Julianne. So my kind of understanding and perspective is that we're all running a pattern and patterns in our life. And often, when we're in that pattern, we're kind of looking down, we're focused on the pattern, we're on automatic pilot, and we're just living our lives by default. And that spiritual awakening is really when we start to notice the whispers of God, universe, source, spirit, life, seeking that expression through us. And when we ignore the whispers, it turns up the volume, right? And until we can't ignore it anymore. And that can look like an escalation of things. When we start to tune into the whispers and they speak to us through our longing and discontent, so that quickening within us, that longing for, an experience or greater abundance in an area, and the discontent may be that recognizing that how things currently are is not working. So there's that kind of feeling inside. So we start to notice those whispers, we start to tune into them. And then as we awaken to our true potential and our true purpose on this planet, and the way that we really want to truly bring our gifts and talents to serve this world. And then anything that's not in alignment with that higher vibrational frequency for our life comes up to a pattern or a release. And so that includes all of our internal patterns, our beliefs, our actions. It can include relationships with other people, right? If you're kind of progressing, you're evolving, you're ascending, you're awakening, whatever language you want to use, anything that's not a match, it either needs to shift with you, or it can also escalate. And I'm thinking of relationships here, our own patterns. They can escalate to actually try to kind of keep us in the pattern that we've known up until this point. And so The dissonance can be a symptom, I think. There can be like physical kind of dissonance, there can be emotional dissonance, there can be relational dissonance. Because we're actually elevating, right? We're starting to show up on a different frequency in our lives, and all of those things that we used to have as our normal, our comfort zone, as Carey put that. I love that. I wrote that down. Am I in the growth zone or the danger zone? Because like you, Carey, my comfort zone is just like a slippery slide into the danger zone. And so knowing that for ourselves, right? And we start to know that by developing that relationship with our own voice for truth, our connection to source, through meditation, through connecting to nature, through being curious, through having that self-compassion, through our forgiveness work to free up space to connect with that voice, the forgiveness work for others, as Debora shared, to really allow us to fully access our life energy. Because if we're hanging on to resentment, if we're nursing, cursing, rehearsing pains and things that happen to us, we're focused on that, right? We're keeping ourselves down here. So that's kind of a big like brain dump of stuff there. Does that kind of make sense?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I love that, because as I'm hearing that, what I hear is what I'm going through is a manifestation of my frequency, so to speak, because it's like we're here, right? And as we continue along this path, I'm adding to it, right? And if those things that I want to bring along with me aren't growing with me, then we're going to see that happen. We're going to see what that looks like. And that might be a symptom of awakening, right? Because I'm awakening, and now this thing is separating from me. And so what does that look like in my life, with far as relationship, material, whatever it could be, life assignment? I say life assignment is like your job, or maybe you have kids, or it could be anything. That's so powerful. And I love what you just say. I like how we're all like writing each other's stuff down. I love this. As you were talking, Carey, about that the unhelpfulness of comfort, that stuckness. And I love here, the first time I heard it, the colloquial term was like, if you're in comfort's zip code, you need to transition your zip code and go to the zip code of growth, because they are not near each other. And it's almost as if you're becoming too comfortable, too like settled in, you're almost like the momentum of your growth is stopping in some way. And so you could see how you need to sit with that for a while, right? Like, I'm in this experience and the pot is simmering before I can continue on. Once I continue on, then I'm having that awakening, right? That awakening is, I've done the work so that my awakening can happen. And that could look, like you said, in the form of shifting relationships, or internalizations of things, like I'm going to do a shift kind of thing, or my actions will shift. Yeah, love that. This is cool. It's good.
Yeah, we have a question for Carey. How has living in Baja helped your spiritual journey? You said there is a lot of partying. Do you find that challenging? And is there a flip side to the lower pace in Baja?
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for that question. Absolutely. One of the unique features of the Baja is its diversity. It's basically desert. You've got the coastline, a few cities where there's a lot of partying going on, but the rest of it is desert. I find an amazing serenity. I now live in a much smaller town called Loreto, Baja California. I've had the ability to retire, which is wonderful, not having to go to work every day. And yeah, absolutely, that slower pace, that ability to get out into nature. One of the things Katherine touched on, and I loved it, and it's frequency. Frequency. I truly believe, that nature has a frequency. We're all energy. We're all vibrating. This is science. That will vibrate. And my brother, who's a musician, taught me a lot about music a long, long, long time ago. My brother's always been my biggest guru. and he's actually the one who got me on a spiritual growth, on a spiritual journey many years ago when I was young. I was raised Jewish, and my brother, who was also raised Jewish, but he said, "Hey, you know what? Buddha's got a lot of good things to say, and so does Jesus, and so does everybody else." And so, I started listening to other people, and once I realized that we all resonate at a certain frequency, we need to make sure that we're resonating at that frequency that nature is resonating on. And I was told once that's 432 hertz. It's been challenged at what it is exactly. But once you find yourself in balance with nature, if you can spend enough time just taking walks in nature, sitting on a beach, sitting in the middle of the desert, sitting in the middle of the forest, it doesn't really matter what it is, but you'll find that moment where your physical body is vibrating at the exact same vibration as the tree or the leaves or the ant that's walking along, and you realize that we aren't all truly connected. And that in itself is an amazing spiritual awakening at that moment. And one of the things I love about where I live is I live right down here at sea level, but right behind me, literally right across the street, are a series of mountains that go up all the way to about 9,000 feet. You want to talk about feeling small and insignificant? Oh my God, it's just the most wonderful feeling in the world. Or to stare out at a stormy ocean or a hurricane coming your way. This is just an amazing amount of energy. And when you tap into that energy and realize that we are all part of that energy. But again, what are you contributing? Are you contributing positive energy or are you contributing negative energy? Is your energy coming from a place of love and service? Or is that energy coming from a place of self-centered fear? So yeah, living in the Baja, no doubt about it. Highly recommended.
Great. Oh boy. How about, through my process, I don't know if this is true for any of you, but I use mirroring a lot. So if I'm seeing something that's triggering me, I'm like, oh, we need to go sit down and have a discussion about this with ourselves. And that is like a huge place for my growth anymore. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak on that.
I believe, I know that all of life's content is the curriculum for our evolution. Everything that we're experiencing, everything that's happening around us, everything that feels like it's happening to us is actually, it's for us. And when we can have that perspective, there's this, and when we can bring that curiosity to it, right? Like, oh, okay, what's here for me? We're practicing non-attachment, so we're able to kind of create some space between the stimulus and the response, and really tune into, okay, what's here for me, right? What is the lesson? What is the learning? What's the gold? And Pauline Hill said it, that every adversity, every challenge has an equal or greater benefit for us. So when we can really approach those things that trigger us, right, it's there for our growth. It's there for our growth. And I also wanted to kind of comment on, yes, I love that the universe is in collaboration with us and for us. It's for us. And we don't attract what we want. We attract who we are, right? We attract experiences, situations, people that are on a similar frequency as us. And so when we get that, it's like, oh, okay, right? And it's not about blaming or shaming ourselves. It's that curiosity. And just something really quickly I wanted to share with people, because it's such a powerful tool, so simple, is to work with your breath. And Carey alluded to this, talking about the nervous system. So often we are in a habitual pattern where we're operating in our sympathetic. So it's that fight, flight, freeze, fawn nervous system, right? It's kind of the dominant frequency of our world. And it feels normal to us. And so we don't even actually know how to kind of slip into the parasympathetic rest, digest, create a different result. And sometimes when we get there, there's a little bit of like, I don't know how to handle this calm or this feeling of peace. And then we kind of do things to subconsciously or consciously get ourselves back in that kind of amped up. And so breath, So noticing when, and I use language like when it feels constrictive or when it feels expansive. And that expansive feeling, that is that spiritual connection speaking to you. That is life telling you, oh, okay, this is my next step. And so when we notice whatever's going on for us, that we're in that constrictive feeling, we just breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth, and it's like a straw, in just a natural and easy pace. So it's not 4 breaths and 10 breaths. It's just whatever feels good to you. And it's such a simple thing you can do. And what you're doing is you're shifting yourself from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic. And that's where that creation exists. It's in that sympathetic where we can really consciously connect to our source, right? And so as we're in our spiritual awakening, in whatever that looks like for us, and we kind of bump up against the edge of the life that we've known, it's going to activate that sympathetic kind of panic. Like, I don't know what's over here, so I'm going to do something to get myself back into what's familiar. So when we notice we're on that edge, we just pause and we breathe. And we align ourselves with the frequency, with the energy of that expanded version of ourselves. And it's simple. It's not rocket science, but it is some of the most rigorous work I believe we will ever do, because our pattern is so strong.
Thank you.
That's good. Yeah. It's like the lesson is to be with the self and accept the self, right? And to calm down into the self part, awaken to yourself. I love it. I love it. You brought in a really cool thing too that I think is important to point out, is that a lot of times when we're going through this awakening process, the comfort of our own zip code comes in as self-sabotage in some way. Carey brought this up. I think everybody touched on it a little bit. It's like, well, what am I going to do to prove to myself that I am the old version of me, right? How am I going to do that? And that's like that self-sabotage. So I think it's very beautiful in some ways. How can we, I guess the question for the wisdom for this comes in is when we notice that we're in that self-sabotage, then what does that mean in relation to our spiritual awakening?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carey. I saw you, and Amanda too.
For me, that's self-sabotage. Go ahead.
Carey, you go ahead.
Thank you. For me, that self-sabotage comes in the form of what I like to call my poo-flinging monkey mind. I've got this, we all have a concept of the monkey mind, and we can picture this monkey, just going crazy. But in my mind, I've got this poo-flinging monkey mind. His favorite thing is just everybody that walks by the cage, he wants to fling poo at them. And that's what my monkey mind constantly does. And it's not, I can't argue with my monkey mind, because all my monkey mind has as tools is negativity. I like to think of the inside of my mind as a museum, but it's not the Museum of Fine Art. It's more like the Holocaust Museum, all right? There's not a whole lot of good things to look at inside my mind, right? Because I've got 63 years of negativity stored up inside my mind. And when I leave my monkey mind to his own, without a job, one of the greatest videos I ever watched was on a Tibetan monk explain what meditation truly is. And that's where I learned this concept of the monkey mind. And I love what Katherine was describing about breathing. So these days, when my monkey mind is getting a little bit of control, and my monkey mind is trying to bring me to that place of self-destruction, because that's where my monkey mind wants to go. My monkey mind just wants to, like I said, throw gasoline all over everything and watch it burn. is that's because I've let my monkey mind, I've let it wander too much. I've let it have too much free time. I need to keep it busy. And the way that I keep my monkey mind busy very quickly is I say, hey, monkey mind, whoa, whoa, whoa. I have a job for you, monkey mind. Matter of fact, it's the most important job there is. I need you to keep me alive. I need you to breathe. So I taught my monkey mind to breathe. I taught my monkey mind to breathe God's grace in, fear out. God's grace in, fear out, to the point where I can just have love in, love out, and it just flows through me. But what I have to, once I get my monkey mind squared away, I have to try to replace those thoughts. So I don't want to have thoughts from my head. The thoughts from my head are going to be negative thoughts, 9 times out of 10. The thoughts from my heart, there's a different thing. And it's when you can start thinking from your heart that the conversation changes, But the only way that I find that I can think from my heart is to be putting in the work. You know, there's a saying that it works if you work it and you're worth it. This whole spiritual journey, it's work. You need to work it constantly. You need to stay involved in this journey constantly. You know, the worst disservice that any motivational trainer ever did was the guy who came up with the concept of you need to get out of your comfort zone, that happiness happens outside your comfort zone. What most people don't know is that whole comfort zone thing, that was an ad for Trane air conditioners. That's where it came from. Let Trane air conditioners put you in your comfort zone. And then somebody grabbed on that as a motivational trainer. We need to make sure that we don't even have a comfort zone, that we're realizing we just need to stay in this growth zone, and we need to do the work constantly to listen to our heart, listen to that still small voice inside our heart, because God can only do for me what he can do through me, and he's doing it through my heart. So in my quiet meditation in the morning, in my 2 chairs, I listen to God speak to me through my heart. I've told my monkey mind to breathe, and then, hey, monkey mind, listen to what my heart is saying today. And my heart is trying to come from a place of love and service. And that's a good vibrational space. So when life is getting a little too lifey for me, it's time to just slow down a little bit, wait. Why am I talking? And listen, and just listen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's good. Yeah, I love. I got the being in your I am is worth it. That's what I heard from. I mean, there's so much that you just said, but being in your I am is worth it. The work is worth it, and to go through that, almost, I want to say it's almost a privilege. Now, I love that you just said that we need to rethink what a comfort zone is. And I think this way in a couple ideas as far as like, I don't believe that coincidence is a good word. I think that synchronicity is a more accurate statement. And similarly now, I almost want to be like, comfort doesn't exist. And it's the idea that we have around it because we're using a word to describe something that keeps us safe, or that keeps us in the past, or that keeps us like in a previous version of ourselves, and that's that comfort, right? So why can't we just enjoy the new moment of this movement through growth at all times? And so it kind of redefines what this idea of comfort is, being that comfort is growth. And so there's these words that are melding together to be comfortable in your I am. That's real comfort. The other part, I want to almost say that you just, for me, redefined that this comfort is actually a form of mediocrity. It's not called comfort. It's this old mediocrity. And instead of saying we're comfortable, we're actually, or instead of saying that we're mediocre, what we're actually saying is I'm comfortable being this way. I'm uncomfortable not growing into my new I am of the next moment. Love that. Holy crap. Yeah. Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. Matthew, to your comment about self-sabotage too, and kind of how that plays in. Just wanted to kind of remark that what we focus on grows, right? So if we are digging into why did I do that? What's that about? How come I'm self-sabotaging myself? That's what we're like pouring our focus and energy into, right? And
You said nursing,
cursing, rehearsing, right? We're like wrapping ourselves up in the why did I do that? And there's a place and a time to kind of recognize our patterns and like, okay, well, this is a pattern for me. I show up like this. And as I notice that pattern, I've got a choice about how I'm going to engage with it. And so when I feed the why am I self-sabotaging, right? I'm feeding that. I'm growing that. And it's keeping us from actually shifting into a new way of being. So and I'm like, I have a master's in counseling. I'm a spiritual life coach. So I do the gamut, right? And there's such a power in being able to notice the pattern and then choose to redirect ourselves. So I'm noticing the self-sabotage, and maybe my pattern is to dig into it and really wrap myself up in, blaming, shaming myself, trying to figure out why it happened. It's just as, if not more effective, it actually is more effective to just notice it, say that was then, this is now. Now this is how I show up. So when we notice and it's like training a dog, right? When you're training them to sit or heel or anything like that, we notice and then we redirect our energy and we take an action, right? To be in alignment with that new version of ourselves. Because if we're just thinking about it, we're entertaining ourselves, right? We're not actually, it's the action that starts to move the molecules, and it's the action that starts to ground that new identity for ourselves. So we notice the pattern. We notice if there's a pull to really like dig into it and kind of get stuck there. And we feel like we're doing something, right? But really we're not doing anything to shift ourselves. So we notice, we pause. Okay, what is the woman? What is the man in my vision? What is this I am that I'm becoming? How do they show up here? And then we do the thing. We connect to our source. We find out what is that inspired action? What is the next right thing for me to do? And then we do it.
I love that. And as you say this, I love how not once in that entire time did you say competition. I'm not in competition with myself. And I love that because so many of us, when we get into that blame game, that like blah, 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 the circle, that's competition. And I just got that message now in noticing that when you say it's a pattern, when you say the next new moment, oh yeah, of course that's my pattern, but I'm choosing this new thing. Now you're in alignment with where you're going instead of in competition with when you're going. So it's interesting that you did that little tricky thing there. I saw that. You're completely identifying the difference between competition and, I guess, alignment. Yeah.
Well, and our language, right, shapes our reality. And so the more that we're conscious of what's the language I'm using to describe my reality, because the language that we use actually directs our subconscious mind. So when we say things like, I always this, or I never that, we're telling our subconscious mind that that's the way it's been and that's the way it's going to continue to be. So that's why I said that was then, right? This is now. This is a new moment.
Spiritual awakenings are so deep.
I think another part to add there, and I completely agree with Catherine, in the, basically once you acknowledge it, the power is gone, right? I think another part that's important is not just to think about, okay, now I'm in thought, make this decision, but to add in there to how do I feel? So when I was in that pattern, and I see that there's this pattern, how did that make me feel? Was I joyful when I ate the whole pie, or maybe should I have, done something else? And now, as I've made this choice, how do I feel about it? Is it like Katherine said earlier too, am I feeling like it's from expansion or not? Is it feeling joyful to me? Is this like, oh, I can conquer the world and here I go, I'm going to do the 100 miles like Amanda did, and is it empowering? Like where is my feeling in this? Because I think we're habits, and the more we get the feeling of this feels good to me, and we know that when we hurt somebody or hurt ourselves, it never feels good. It never does. To some people, they might say, oh yeah, that felt really good to, flip the bird in traffic or whatever. It didn't. I don't think it does really. It's not good for the person doing it or the receiver. So I think that I think it's important for us to ask that as well. And I agree with Katherine. I mean, like I say, I go by the Smash Through Mentor. I don't think we have to, grind this in a mortar to figure it into a fine powder as to why we do what we do. Okay, you did what you did. Get over it already. Like moving.
I love that. It's you're synergizing right there with what Carey said earlier about being spiritually awakening to every new moment, or like all the time, is constantly having spiritual awakening. I love how you're like, taking in, like eating. You made a reference to eating something. And I love that one of my human life assignments is to continuously discover my relationship with ice cream. And sometimes it happens on a daily basis. We'll see. But so in that, I love how you just brought, how does this make you feel? Because it's like when you approach a situation and you're having a bad moment about it, you're like, wait a minute, is this a moment for a spiritual awakening? Because it's like, am I doing something because of an avoidance mechanism? Am I eating this thing because I'm trying to do something else? But I just am not, like, my ego, Carey, like you said, hasn't been programmed with the solution to know what to do. And so it's just throwing poo everywhere, and it just happens to look in the form of just eating ice cream like a tub at a time or something like that, when that's not really, I'm trying to do something, but my ego is just doing this when I could be elevating this situation.
I think too, to kind of just add onto this lovely conversation, is like acknowledging progress too when we're on this journey. I think we can, as humans, like to make it a very linear process that I'm like, well, I'm gonna go from here, then I'm going to be, well, geez, Cameron, I'm going to go to here and it's going to be done and it's going to be great and I'm going to get the award and it's coming in the mail and I'm going to be like, I completed my spiritual awakening. But it doesn't, right? Like we know
here's your trophy.
Right? I'm waiting for mine still. But like the reality is that it's like a spiral. I'm sure many of you talk and know about all this, is that like we're in a spiral of time that's going up. I really need to use the other hand. There we go. Spiral of time going up. And we're revisiting the same experiences many times. And it feels sometimes like we're going backwards or like we're not moving forwards or we're stuck and we're not going anywhere. But I think when we're acknowledging self-sabotage, we can kind of go, well, hey, I'm actually acknowledging it this time. Whereas last time I wouldn't even have known that I was sabotaging myself. I would have just assumed that was my reality. So when we're kind of in this, to just remember that it's not just from point A to B. It's we're always on this journey. It's always growing and evolving, and we revisit things not to show us that we're not doing anything, but to show us how far we are growing and where we still need to have room to grow as well.
Exactly. Exactly. To love ourselves in the process is a big deal, and recognize our progress.
And to remember that we're not the same vibration. The solution is not the same vibration as the problem.
All right.
You are never going to have your answer when you're thinking about the problem. You got to think about what's the solution.
Yeah,
And what's the joy? And like Amanda said, celebrate. Okay, celebrate. Okay, so I screwed. All right. Okay, so you know what? It's not the first time, not the last, for sure, for this girl. So it's gonna, let's acknowledge it. Let's realize that the solution isn't going to come right in this second that I'm in the quagmire. You know, uh, one of the things I've said often when I've been, teaching is, the best thing is when you're in the middle of the pile of poo, get to the outside and take a shower. Like, that's just get past it a little bit and get happy, get joyful, do something else. It's not going to come. And it's amazing, because personally, one of the things that I do is I rely on the angels a lot, and I'm constantly, saying to them, okay, I need this, and it's works for me. I think almost 100% of the time I'm looking for something and I can't find it, and I have looked everywhere. Finally, I say, okay, you guys, I need this paper. I need it now. So I'm going to go do this. And when I come back, I want that paper. And sure as heck, I come back and I say, oh, I got to do this now. I move that paper that I have moved at least 5 times. And there's what I'm looking for. So again, vibration of problem and solution. Let it go, bless it, talk to them, tell them to, help you out. They're ready and waiting. And that was a spiritual awakening for me, was realizing, hey, I just have to give it to them more often. I don't have to completely stay the control freak I am, because they're there. So let's just give it to them, and they work for free.
Yeah. Matthew, did you have another question? What you had?
Oh my, this is so juicy. I mean, once we get into this conversation, we're realizing that that a spiritual awakening is so broad, it's so vast. I guess so. There's the first question that comes to mind. Actually, I have 2 questions, and they're kind of like backwards, odd questions in a way. But the first one is anyone exempt from a spiritual awakening? Oh, we have another question coming through too.
Did you want to take this one first, and we'll?
Sure. So is anybody, Carey, yeah, go ahead. Do you want to take that one? And then let's let the panelists think about, is anyone exempt from a spiritual awakening? Oh, are you muted?
So the question is, why, if I know that the solution is the answer, why does my monkey mind try to dominate my life the majority of the time? Do I have a manufacturing defect? No, absolutely not. We're human. We're human. My favorite thing to remember is rule number 62. And if anyone doesn't know rule number 62, they should Google it. Rule number 62 is don't take yourself so damn seriously. We are all humans. We are all just, spiritual beings having a human experience. My favorite Wayne Dyer quote, God bless him. And I live by that, so we're going to mess up. We're going to do the wrong thing. And on your question, could you repeat your question, please, Matthew?
Yeah, my question is anybody exempt from a spiritual awakening?
I would have to say no. I would have to say there's nobody that's exempt from a spiritual awakening. I was told once that if I'm not the problem, there is no solution. If I'm not the problem, there is no solution. So the key to that thinking is that no matter what's going on out there, right, I can only control 3 things. I can control the thoughts I think. Not necessarily that first one, but definitely the second one. I can then control the image I project based on that thought. And then because of that, I can control the action I take based on that image. So what does that mean? Well, that means that everybody, if they can use those tools, if they realize this to be true, that everybody's got their own matrix going on, we all see things differently. If we're seeking to do the will of our higher power, rather than what we think, how we think the world should run, well, that's a spiritual awakening in itself right there. You know, as soon as I realize that I'm not in charge, as soon as I'm realizing I am not running the show, you know, I constantly ask in a morning prayer for my higher power to grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. What is that? Everything there, the entire world, everything that's going on. The courage to change the things I can. What's the things I can? My attitude, how I see the things, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think if we allow ourselves that opportunity to just realize that, hey, you know what? I can't control everything, but something is controlling everything. And I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm not asked to understand electricity. When I flip on the switch, the lights come on. I'm not asked to understand that, but I take it for granted. And I know that it's going to be there. And that in itself is a spiritual awakening. It's just realizing that all I have to do is let go, let my higher power give me the guidance, and seek that guidance. And I guess that's the whole thing, is that, so can everybody have a spiritual awakening? Yes, but you've got to look for it. One of my favorite sayings comes from a good buddy of mine, Tom Ziglar. He's the grateful son of Zig Ziglar. And he says, what you feed your mind determines your appetite. What you feed your mind determines your appetite. In order to get something out of the well, you got to put something into the well. You got to prime that pump first. So you want to have a spiritual awakening? Well, turn off the porn and turn on the spiritual channel for a few minutes. You know, it's what you feed your mind determines your appetite. So these days, I try to feed my mind with as much of the good that I possibly can, and listen to other people who are on this path as well.
I love that. Thank you. And I want that question answered again from somebody else, because there are going to be people in this world that do not have an internal understanding of a higher power or an outside source of power. So I want to bring context to that question using that definition too. Does anybody want to take
Go,
it?
Amanda. Go, Amanda.
I can see as we're taking turns with the mute button. I feel like everybody is given the opportunity to have an awakening, if that makes sense, where we're given times in our lives that we could choose. But I do agree. I don't believe that everyone is going to choose. That's not their journey. That's not where they're not ready to choose yet. And it comes to like that. When we awaken, we may want everyone around us to awaken as well, to see things the way we see them. But some people just aren't. They're not. That's not their journey. And I think sometimes that can be helpful to remember, because we're all on our own journey. I think that's the important thing to remember. And they're not going to look the same, and we're not all going to awaken. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Sorry, you're saying, so you just to clarify, you're saying that my spiritual journey is probably not going to look like your spiritual journey.
Exactly.
I don't recognize it.
Yes, we're remembering the same universal truths, but we interpret those differently. We always will, and that will show up differently in our lives. And no journey will look the same, but I think the arc is similar, right? Connecting back to self, understanding self, right? It all comes back to self. And even though we are all connected, we also have unique things about us that we're here on this earth to learn, to give to others. And while we're sharing those universal truths, like those yeses that you hear and go, I know this to be true and I don't know why, but I just know it's true. But then we're also here, and I think this is where purpose comes in, to share our own unique wisdom as well. That's here to help to maybe awaken, activate others, but because they choose to, not because we are willing them to walk that journey.
Yeah.
I think everybody has spiritual awakenings all the time. I think from the time we learned how to walk, and we went, how excited we were that we could walk. I think that's like a spiritual awakening. I think when we learned how to speak, when we found our fingers and our toes, I mean, I just think the whole thing is a spiritual thing. And I think some people are, I think people are afraid to label it. They have these great moments in life, and that they're afraid to say, oh, I had a spiritual awakening, or, oh, it's another spiritual awakening, because, oh, that's kind of the woo-woo stuff and all the weird people are doing that, like us. so I think that there's a fear around being attacked or labeled or disapproved of or judged. So I hope that people, my hope would be that people, as they listen to some of, many of us now, I'm so glad so many more people are talking openly. It's now becoming the norm. And I'm hoping that a lot of people become more comfortable in that. That it's okay that we, maybe lots of people, maybe some of you didn't agree with everything I had to say. Maybe I didn't agree with everything everybody else had to say, but there's nuggets there. There's precious, precious, precious wisdom that if we look for it and mine it, we find it. And that's what I'm hoping that people will find, and they'll be able to say, well, it's okay to call it a spiritual awakening or an aha moment or whatever they want to call it. But it is enlightenment, and it does wake us up.
Love that. I love it. Oh my goodness. Oh, that feels good. And it leads right into the other question that I was going to bring up. I wanted to ask this earlier, but this is just, this is amazing. I want this to go on for another 4 hours or something. Obviously we're human, so that's going to be hard. But anyway, for the last one, or maybe just for the last question, I'm going to interject into here is, what is a forced spiritual awakening?
I think Katherine had something to add to that last bit.
Oh, Katherine, please interject. And then Maria, it looks like you wanted to touch base on that question. Yeah.
Thanks, Jillian. Yeah, I was just going to say with the spiritual awakening, I think that life spirit whispers to us and we can choose to listen or not. So I think some people are going to choose to fully listen and honor. Some people are going to wake up and fall asleep, and some people are going to just not, right? They're not going to name it. They're not going to pursue it. It's just not what they're here to do. So I think it really is I think there's so many opportunities, and we have the gift of free will. Right? That's one of our human faculties, is that gift. So we get to choose if we're actually going to listen to that or not. And over to you, Maria.
I could just listen to you guys all day. In regards to your question, Matthew, I think I've actually had a forced spiritual awakening when I was 3, as I mentioned earlier, because it's a time of when tragedy or anything major can happen, and all of a sudden something deep inside of you forces you to pay attention, really, really pay attention to what is in front of you, and cause you to shift so vastly inside of your own vessel, your body, that you're being forced to say, listen, pay attention. This is what's in front of you right now. And that to me was when I was 3 years old, right? So I utilized that very, very moment, was like, how can I do better at this very moment right now so that my spiritual awakening keeps happening, so that it's, not forced and it's not coming so harshly at me. Because there are times when we feel those ascensions and it can cause our bodies to shift so drastically, like either we're getting really sick or something happens, you know what I mean? And I use that moment to understand, like, how can I do better so that my spiritual awakenings are not so hard and forced onto me? And how can I be better for others so that I can show them what to do with it so that they're not having to experience it that hard?
Yeah. Go ahead, Deborah. Yeah.
Just to kind of add about the forced spiritual awakenings, and I talk a lot about the whispers, the chapter I wrote in the book that became an international bestseller with Corey Poirier. My chapter is called Listen to the Whispers or Get the 2x4. And that, to me, the 2x4 that can leave bruises and break you is this forced spiritual awakening. And there's good ones when you do listen to those whispers and you go, wow, and then how sometimes those whispers, when you don't whisper or when you don't listen, become audible and become a shout, and you best be paying attention because catastrophes happen. And I talk about that in the chapter and in some other stuff I do. But it's to me that when you don't listen to the whispers, you're going to get a forced awakening somewhere.
Mm-hmm. I love that. With clients, I always say, when are we done playing whack-a-mole with the universe? And because we're the mole. I mean, they're going to keep coming at us, giving us infinite opportunities to do things. And, do we want to continuously get hit over the head with that mallet?
But Matthew, it's not the universe that keeps coming at us. We keep coming at us.
It's ourselves. Yes. I wanted to bring context to, or as you saying, as you guys, as both of you just illuminated, it's almost like when we're going into this forced, or when we're going into an awakening, we already have a pre-understanding that we're needing something. Like there's something about us that has to shift, right? And so in some ways, we're already engaging in a spiritual awakening because we've had the epiphany that something needs to shift. So we're at that foundational stage. And then how do we move into that shift? And so sometimes, we have been talking about a lot of the healthy aspects of, healthy aspects of how we've all gone through and gained tools to be with ourselves, the I am, to understand that we're growing, right? So inherently, we're talking about how do we grow through this into the new version, right? So that requires work, it requires tools, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a certain level of respect and honoring that we want to do along that process, right? And so in this context of spiritual awakenings, a lot of our people viewing this, or we may know somebody who's been, I need the epiphany now. I need the change now. And they're not willing to just do that conversation, like Carey was saying, the two chairs. They're not willing to just have that eye-opening conversation. They're more stuck in trying to, I wrote it down, nurse, curse, and rehearse what they're going through. And so there's a sense of going to somebody who understands what a spiritual awakening is, the tools that you might need to, come out relatively unscathed, relatively unscathed. And so I bring into that because a lot of us might choose to go into journey. For my experience, when I brought in earlier, I went through a forced spiritual awakening because I used, at the time, it was DMT. And it was interesting because I didn't think anything was really big going to happen with that, right? I was being very cavalier, but a lot of us are going to these certain substances that want us to awaken consciousness or things like that. And so when we do that, those are let me back up. Those are medicines, right? And so those medicines need to be facilitated appropriately and loved into the container, just like you're having a conversation with yourself, like you say, Carey, that one-on-one conversation. And so when we go into these forced awakenings, it jettisons us without the skills to know how to deal with what we just realized. So for me, I went through suicidal depression almost 2 days later. Had my group not, had I not had a good solid foundation, I could have been in pretty deep water in that. And when I realized, whoa, I just woke up way too quickly. I didn't even realize that that's what I was actually doing, was forcing myself to wake up into the moment. Like when I look at it, I was victimizing, thinking that all of these emotions of suicidality and all these other things were like a horrible thing to go through, until I realized it was a spiritual awakening. Once I realized that, I was able to gain the wisdom from that knowledge. Going forward, I would not want to be like, hey, I'm going to cavalierly go sign up with my friends and go do this thing, right? I don't want to be that way, because I'm going to get hit over the head with I'm going to hit myself over the head with a mallet. And so in that context, I survived that spiritual awakening that I put myself through. But had I had the ability to go and seek appropriately, like, hey, have you gone through this? I need help right now. Is there some type of skill, medicine, or whatever that I could be in a sacred container with? I would have probably not had all the suffering, right? But it was, of course, something that I chose to go through. And so that I wanted to bring context into that portion of forced awakenings, where we see it all the time. I actually do have a lot of clients that come in through my office that have gone through similar situations as me. And I wanted to get that out there to say that there's ways of helping your awakening process. And then there's ways that speed it up. Yeah, so I just wanted to bring context to that. And anybody wanting to to share a story around that or whatever, I'll just let you open up.
I've experienced with that every single morning. I have the pleasure, I have the honor of chairing an AA meeting every single morning, and up towards 100 to 150 people now in 60 countries because of Zoom. And there's a lot of people on the meetings that they've hit rock bottom. They're looking for anything, please, something that can help me, relieve me of this desire to drink and this desire to destroy my life and everything around it. And the beautiful thing about the meeting I'm on is it's not necessarily alcoholics. These are people that are addicted to drugs or anything that's ruining their lives. It's a very open meeting. There's a lot of people on the meeting there, though, that have been forced to be in the meeting. And those are the people that went to, they got a DUI. They went to court, and the judge, okay, you have to attend this many meetings, right? And so they're forced. Now, here's the interesting thing, and about the 12-step program. The first step is the only step that mentions alcohol. The first step. It's the only step of the 12 steps that mention alcohol. The rest of the steps are guides to living life on life's terms. The 12th step says very clearly, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. It says it right there. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. So yeah, there are steps you can do, and there are things you can do, and there are people that can guide you, because in this program that I belong to, you're not expected to go through that alone. The first thing that you're told to do is get a sponsor, someone who has been through it already and knows that it works and can relate to what you're talking about. So yes, it can be forced. You've got to want it. They say that in sales, unfortunately in sales, the number one way to get a sale is the fear of loss. A fear of loss. Oh, if you don't buy this, you're not going to have this. But the wonderful thing about spirituality is it's the opportunity for gain. It's the opportunity for gain, because the people that I get to talk to, they've already lost everything. There's nothing left to lose. So it's only the opportunity for gain. And we always get to say, if you want what I have, then you should take certain steps that are suggested. And as a result of these steps, a spiritual awakening.
Yes, using wisdom, using mentors, going to the appropriate facilitators. I love it.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. Guides, coaches, mentors, people who have walked the path, people who can support you when you're feeling like you're going a little bit off the deep end, right? To be able to kind of reel you back in and help you find your footing. Yeah, and to know that you're not alone in this journey, and that you don't have to, like, there's parts that you absolutely you're going to have to kind of figure out for yourself in terms of your unique path, but there is a path. And so to connect with those people who can really support you in that.
Mm. Mm.
And who are non-judgmental. They're not going to judge you for what you've thought, done, been. That is the other thing, whether it's with, a sponsor, a coach, a mentor, a consultant, they're not going to be judging you. There's a safety there. And I think that's really important for people to know.
Also, sorry. And
No, go.
how open you have to also be for yourself and be vulnerable in regards to opening up to these awakenings and to seeking someone, to knowing that someone is out there to listen to you.
Mm. I love that, and it's giving this permission, or this permission to yourself to believe that there are people out there who have been through it and they want to guide. They are here, kind of like how, the universe coming through. Some of us have gone through these experiences, and we're 100% willing and set up with a foundation to help those people who are going through these experiences. Yeah, that's huge. Love it. Yeah, Amanda, I saw your thing come out.
Yeah, and just too that the journey is uniquely yours too. Like, I know we all walk these journeys, and it can be it can be something that we may just want someone to just tell us what to do, where to go, to hand us the map and be like, you're going this direction. But really, those who walk alongside you on this journey, walk beside you, give you the tools for the rough times, and give you that space, give you that support, that feeling of not being alone. But the journey is yours, so you can't really compare your journey to someone else's. Or feel like you're not doing as much or not as far along as you should be, because there is no scale to measure that by, only within, and how you feel within as well.
Thank you. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. If anybody has anything to add, I invite you to do that now. If not, I would love anybody that's doing a special or has training classes coming up, please share that information. We'll also share what the Bleep website, so that people can find you and reach out to you if they want to connect with you and what you do.
So just to actually let you guys know, I do have something coming up here from February 3rd to the 6th, which is just a small masterclass talking about spiritual awakenings, really getting deep into understanding what it is about staying connected with the universe. And, just to the collective out there, if you are experiencing a spiritual awakening, I just ask you guys to really stay connected and ask the questions to yourself. Get connected to someone that you know has either gone through this or understands some of it, because really we are all here to help you and guide you in going through your journey as well, right?
Anyone?
I have some things coming up, actually. I'm currently part of Week of Kindness, and it's free until the end of the month. There's 100 speakers, so many talented people on there, and lots of gifts and all kinds of stuff. I also have a masterclass coming up actually next week, and it's called Whisper Wisdom Works. So it's a little more on that, listen to the whispers or get the 2x4. So, and my big passionate thing, in addition to that, because that's a big thing, because I'm an expert in not listening to the whispers. So I was gifted. A lot of my stuff, as I'm sure you guys and many other people, like, I just get downloads, and they just start giving it to me, and you just better get typing or writing or whatever, because it's coming, and that's the way it's going to be. So one of the things that I was given is I was basically told that you're going to be writing a book called Live Life in Wow. And WOW stands for wonder, openness, and wisdom. And so I am in the process. I've got that about half done. And I'm going to be looking for other authors who'd like to collaborate on that and share their WOW stories. And the whole theme of the books, the series will be wonder, openness, and wisdom. And that'll be part of it. And I want to start a movement around that. I want people at least to have the opportunity to start recognizing the wows in life. And I want to start a movement around that, and I can't do it by myself. So I'm inviting people to get in touch with me, and let's just make it happen, because I think, well, according to them, this has to happen. So I'm just going with the flow. So, and I want to say thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you to all of you wonderful fellow panelists that I've learned so much from today, and enjoyed basking in your moments of everything. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything?
I want to thank Julie and Matthew directly for getting us involved in this. Thank you so much. And a big shout out to Corey Poirier for also kind of hooking us all together. Deborah and I have both done some work with books with him together. It's a wonderful thing. I would encourage anybody that would like to continue the conversation on comfort zones and all that kind of stuff to reach out to me on Facebook, or go to my website at careylowe.com, or download my book on Amazon, which is called Not Today's Shark. That's all. Thank you so much for being here.
Fabulous. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd also love to say thank you so much for creating this space and bringing us together. And yeah, I'm just so full of gratitude for all of you. I have a podcast. You can kind of catch me there. It's called My Dead Dragon. And it's conversations with women who woke up one day and realized that no one was coming to save them. And so they chose to become the heroine and main character of their own story. And so it's really, it's kind of a different perspective on that spiritual awakening journey, and what did that look like, right? And I think so often we can see other people and think they've got it all figured out or they've got it all together. And this kind of peels back the curtain to say, like, no, we're all doing our best here to figure it out. And then I also have a free challenge coming up at the end. So it's the first week of February, January 31 to February 4, I think that is. And it is a 5-day challenge to expand your money mindset. So often we are wanting to live into this greater expression of our life. And to do that, we're actually really wanting to kind of call in greater levels of abundance, and not just financial, but love and health and joy and purpose and all of the good, juicy stuff. And often money is very charged for people. There's lots of feelings about that. A lot of people have some stuff to unpack. And so this is a challenge, and I'm going to be doing it over 5 days. It's free, to really help people kind of identify, unpack, and repattern what those blocks are, recognizing that it's just one form of abundance. And so I'll send that to you, Julianne and Matthew, and it's also going to be on my website. You can sign up for my newsletter and catch it there on my socials. And again, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I'll finish off the group. Just with a big thank you as well. This has been just a wonderful experience, and getting to share some space with like-minded people has been wonderful. I have a program starting up on February 10th called The Light Collective, and that is for sensitive souls to find home within themselves so that they never feel lost again. And that's all about helping you understand that who you truly are is wonderful, and that there is a lot of magic within you. So it's I'm always very excited to help share that with others. And if anyone resonates with my energy, my group Souls Awakening, Discover Your Soul Purpose is just a lovely place to find that community as well for sensitive souls. So again, thank you guys so much. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. I am going to have to go sit down and just think about all the way. I'm going to have to go back and watch this again, because there's just so much here to take away and learn from, or take as a tool to use later on, So I just want to thank everyone for sharing your stories, being here, being part of this. Matthew, you have anything to add?
Just thank you. Yeah. This has been such a wonderful experience. Download an experience of cooperation and co-creation. And I just love and am humbled that I get to be a part of it. And I'm with everybody here. It's just beautiful. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Carey. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Debbie. It's just beautiful. And I'm going to say, because we have to celebrate ourselves, thank you to me for showing up, because I did get here. We all do the same thing. So thank you, everybody. It's been beautiful.
I just want to let our audience know that our next part of this, the third part of this webinar series, will be February 5th. And it will be on what the bleep are spiritual gifts. So just
Ooh, so excited for that. I mean, as this is, what's all this about? As we, episode 2 is winding down here. I think that Julie and I did very good due diligence at dividing this into 8 topics. And I think it's very obvious that we could talk for 100 hours, hundreds upon hundreds of hours about spirituality and everything that has to do with it. So please share this podcast. Go rewatch episode 1, start commenting on there, make a couple comments to ask more questions. We are going to be doing much more. This is not the end of just this conversation. This is a continuing conversation. Just like episode 1, episode 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, we'll all be continuing conversations. So thank you.
Hopefully it'll become a legacy here. So
Yes.
We appreciate all of you. So I want to thank all our viewers and our future listeners. This will be available through my podcast, Spiritual Alchemy Energy, on Spotify, Apple, and I will share the links with everyone. So you can share those out too if you like. Thank you.
If anybody hasn't watched episode 1 yet, it was fabulous. So I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Okay. Good night, or have a good day, everyone. I'm not used to doing a daytime show.
Thanks.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.